Gentleman for the 13th, Delegate Ihle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hear a lot about balance. Balance, to me, is not adding to the tax burden of the people of this state anymore. Balance is making sure that for once, government takes the hit, not the taxpayer. Our citizens pay more in taxes than they do on shelter, clothing, and food combined. Adding to their burden is not balance. This bill is not part of a balanced approach. It is a very unbalanced approach. And that's just one of many reasons that I must strongly oppose it. In addition to balance, we hear about compromise. And while I don't think it's been explicitly stated today, I think it's been implied that individuals who hold my position on taxation are not compromising. This is not true. There are taxes that I would not only like to lower, I would like to eliminate. I think the property tax is immoral because it means you're renting your property from the government. You don't really own it. If you don't pay those, it can be taken away, just like property that you rent. I think the income tax is terrible. I'd like to see that go, or at least be lowered. I'd like to replace those with taxes on consumption. But you know, I understand we are where we are today, and that I can't have my own way all the time. And no, I don't run this place, certainly not. And so my way of compromising is saying, okay, we don't have to lower any taxes right now. Just don't raise them. That's my compromise. That's where I'm willing to compromise to. So yes, I am willing to compromise. I ask myself many times, why are we here? And I think that's a lot of what West Virginians are asking. Why are we here? I think I'm here to protect the rights, liberties, and the pocketbooks of my fellow West Virginians. I hope that's why we all think why we're here, but I also know that a big reason why that many feel that they're here is to protect people's health. I don't feel like that's my main reason for being here, but I respect those who feel differently. And as the gentlelady from the 43rd so accurately pointed out, yes, the American Heart Association did say that this bill is not going to have an impact on people to stop smoking. They said they would rather see the bill die than to pass a half measure. They would rather see this bill die. This is an organization that's concerned with the people who die from smoking and other cancers that come from other habits. I trust their judgment on this. And even though I disagree with their ultimate policy solution, I respect their admission that this half measure doesn't do anything to move the needle. It's been testified before Finance Committee that this will not achieve the goal of deterring people from smoking. But even if it did, if we assume what the supporters of this bill are saying to be true, then boy, this is a terribly unsustainable solution for our budget. Why would we pass a tax to get people to stop smoking, knowing that we're going to collect less revenue from it over time and eventually wind up in the same position that we're in right now? It makes no sense. It's backwards. We've also been asked, I think more so yesterday than today, but both days, to think of the children. We had another bill in regular session where I pointed out that it always seems when government's asking for more money, the politicians, no matter which party they're in, they hide behind the most vulnerable in order to push it. Children, seniors, puppies, kittens. Think of the children. And while I do try to think of all people that I represent, I don't like to play the emotional think of the children game. But if you know what? If we're going to be asked to play that game, then let's play it. I'm known around here for a lot of things. I'm sure not all of them good, but one of the things I am proud about is my bright ties. This one's not quite as bright as most of them, but I think it's still pretty bright. This tie is the same color of the suit that my Uncle Joe used to wear. Used to, because he's no longer with us. Now, I can't wear a suit in this color. I can't pull it off. But I'll stick with the tie. I can do that. He's very important to me. He was a smoker for many, many years, and we lost him due to stage 4 lung cancer. When he was diagnosed, he gave it up. It was too late, though. The damage had been done. It was irreversible. And to see someone's lose all sorts of faculties, from breathing to mental cognition, the voice, just to see him go down like that, it ripped my heart out. I have to think to myself, based on the evidence that I've seen, would this 45-cent tax have let me keep my Uncle Joe? No, it wouldn't have. He was addicted. He was an addict, and he would have still smoked. I also saw, after he passed, the financial struggles that my Aunt Lee went through and her kids, and what it was like to not have Uncle Joe around and his income. What would that tax have done? It would have meant that there was less money to be left the kids and the family than they had otherwise. So think of the children. Think of those children that, had they had a higher tax, would have had less money left to care for them. Think of the children for once. Another cousin prayed at church. He must have been 5, 6 years old. Pray for my papaw Daryl, because he eats backer. This is my cousin Clayt. 45 cents won't save papaw Daryl. It won't. It won't do it. But it leaves less money in the long run for Clayt, my cousin, or others to inherit, if we ever and when we do lose papaw Daryl. But those aren't the only people. Don't just think about my people. Think about the shop owners. You know, these gas stations that sell cigarettes and other tobacco products. I got a call on the day of the primary, the day before the primary, someone in Pomeroy, Ohio, and I'm busy trying to, seal up for the primary, and I'm thinking, why would somebody be calling me from Ohio? Why should I take this call? They can't vote for me, but I did. And I found out when I listened to her, she crosses the bridge to go into Mason to purchase her tobacco products. And she says, even though the tax won't go up as high as it is over there, it's no longer economically feasible for me to spend the time and effort and the money to do it, to make that drive, make that trip. It's just not worth it. Now, what does that lady do when she's in Mason? She'll stop by the Walmart, get some groceries, get some clothes maybe, supplies, maybe get a plant, a flower at Bob's Market and Greenhouse. But if she's not making that trip over there, she's not going to be in Mason as much to spend her money. So we may feel good by taxing people, those dirty, dirty smokers. But as someone who's not only never smoked or never drank in my life, I'm going to be affected by this too, and we all will be, because that's less money in our local economies. Yes, it is a tax on the poor, and for a lot of reasons. Why is it so that poor people are far more likely to be smokers? Lower income smokers take longer and deeper drags on each cigarette. This has been proven by research. This was in the Washington Post. Why is that? Because it's more scarce to them. It means more to them to cough up that cash, so they take a longer drag on that cig. What does that do? It intensifies their addiction. They need it more, even more than someone who was well off. It's also a fact that income tends to segregate people based on where they work. You know, if you have a bunch of doctors, they're all probably high-income people, as they should be. But there's going to probably be a lot of pressure on that one holdout doctor who smokes from his colleagues to stop smoking. But also know from experience that it's your local grocery store, where everybody's making minimum wage or a little above, you love those smoke breaks. And so there's a lot of pressure on someone who is smoking to not give that up, because they are surrounded by people who are far more likely to smoke. A Gallup poll says the rate of smoking among folks making less than $24,000 was more than double those making $90,000. And friends, we have a lot more people making under $24,000 than we do over 90 in this state, I can assure you. And I know that comes as no surprise. The gentlelady from the 48th was correct in something she really touched on. If we want to stop folks from smoking, we need to make sure that there's fewer people who are poor. And so if we want there to be fewer people who are poor, we don't want to take more of their money by raising their taxes. We want to lift them up. We want to take less of their money. We want to enact policies that allow for job creation. That's what we want to do if we want to stop smoking. It's no coincidence that we're 48th, 49th, 50th in per capita income and number one in smoking. Those things are directly related. Simply raising taxes is not going to fix that. It's going to, if anything, I would argue, exacerbate the problem. It's going to make the poor poorer, drive us farther down the list of the rankings. Don't tax these people. Make them wealthy. You know, between the health, the taxes, the business aspects, I'm reminded by what President Ronald Reagan said. Governments tend not to solve problems, but only rearrange them. I feel like that's what we're doing today if we pass this. We can't do that. I know some, not myself, and I think recent history proves what I'm about to say, that I'm not so concerned about this, but I know many are concerned about losing elections. No one has ever lost an election because he refused to raise taxes. Let's make that clear. I do think a lot of people have lost elections because they fail to keep their word, although far fewer people than what really deserve it. And so this pledge that we've heard so much about, as the gentleman from the 62nd so aptly pointed out in his column, is not a pledge to faraway people in Washington, D.C. It's not. It's a pledge to our constituents and being transparent that we're not going to raise their taxes. And that's a pledge that people on both sides of the aisle have made. And I stand by it. A man's word is his bond, and it means something. If we don't have our word, we have nothing. I have no interest in breaking the trust with my constituents. That's sacred. I won't do that. But as important as that is, and as important as my trust with you all is, all that is falling away when I look at my trust with God. And I'm reminded of an appropriate passage from the book of Numbers, of all things. Numbers 30, verse 2. When a man takes an oath to obligate himself by a pledge, he must not break his word, but must do everything he said. Ladies and gentlemen, think about that before you push the button today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
John from 37th, Delegate Pushkin. Favorite passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. Clerk will prepare the machine.
The following have paired in accordance with House Rule 43. Delegate Border Shepherd, yea. Delegate Householder, nay.
Has every member voted? If so, clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, 44 ayes, 55 nays, one member absent not voting. Less than the majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill rejected. Bill's on the second reading.